staff, and then we'll review the benefits and detriments and see if we're in a position to make a recommendation. Go ahead.
Yeah, Alex. Is Alex here? Lucy, do you see him?
If he's not, we'll skip that.
I don't think he's here yet.
Let me call him. Give me 1 second.
Also, Joan Malkin has joined us. Yay.
Do that. Yes. Okay, well, since he's not here, if he shows up, we'll bring him in. But why
You
don't
have
we?
all the materials, do you not, Doug?
Pardon me?
You have the materials, I believe.
Yeah, we all have the materials.
Okay.
I just would have asked if there were any documents introduced after, in the period between the hearing and the closure of the record.
I believe what was introduced was the applicant's final offers and the applicant's response. I think the applicant posted their condo documents and then responded to questions raised by staff. I think that may have all happened since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There was a couple of other things. There was a drawing that had a bunch of miscellaneous stuff on it that was asked for, what trees are being cut down, where the HVAC units were going and so on.
Right. And I think you also, in addition to that, then you have a final drawing by Schofield.
Yes, that was just a stamped site plan,
Right.
no changes.
That here.
Doug, if we have questions on the drawings that have been submitted by Sam, how do we want to address answering those?
Well, the public hearing is closed, but if there are questions that can be characterized as seeking clarification, I suppose we can get them now. Maybe we ought to do that first. And the other thing that's been added is I believe we also have Ross Seavey's email regarding use of the basement floor in the main building in light of the designation of the main floor as commercial. And Sam's response, which was, well, I'll ask for a waiver from the planning board, and if I don't get it, then the main floor will be used for an exempt purpose under chapter 48, section 3.
Right. I think Alex, did both of those things come in after the public record had closed, the Ross Seavey stuff and Sam's response?
I'm just dropping in. I just got here like 5 seconds ago, so I'm not quite sure what you're
Well, I'm
referring to.
Talking about Ross Seavey's email and Sam's memo saying he'll ask for a waiver, and if he doesn't get a waiver, he'll designate the main.
Yeah, so that was all before the record closed.
Okay.
Okay, I stand. So both those things came in before the record closed.
Yep.
Okay, there you go. So,
Okay. Okay, well, Alex, I think we just covered the additions to the record since the last public hearing. So why don't we go into offers and conditions and then benefits and detriments.
Doug, can I ask a clarification on one of the?
You wanted to ask about plans, go ahead.
Yeah, there was just on the plan, Sam, that you identified some of the features, and I had a question on the trash. Is the trash area between the two commercial buildings by Union Street, is that the entirety for all of the uses of the property, the residential and the commercial? Is that the single trash location?
Yes,
And just from my understanding, which two buildings are you talking about, E and F? No.
I think they're, yeah, buildings E and F. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a project trash 12 96-gallon totes, I think is the note. And I just wondered if there's any conflict between potentially the residential and the commercial uses for the trash.
well, if there was a heavy user like a restaurant at some point, that would have to be addressed separately. But I think it's a condominium expense, the trash, and I believe these retail uses and offices don't generate much trash, and it's not very nasty trash. And
No, the only thing the retail, potentially is boxes, cardboard, if they get a shipment of material, you know, they have to,
Yeah.
if there's room for that to be stored.
There's quite a large space there. I did that intentionally. I think it's a good place for it. It's close to the street where stuff could be hauled out. And it's not in a sensitive area.
Would you imagine the trash pickup would be a car or truck or a trash truck on Union Street or in the municipal parking? I mean, where would be the easier,
I think Union Street.
but that would entail stopping on Union Street to get the trash pickup.
Yes.
Anything else on that? Okay, let's turn to the applicant's offers. And we might as well look at our potential conditions that are analogous to each offer, because seems to me to make more sense. The first offer is on housing. Unit R2, Building A, will be deed restricted as affordable with an income restriction no more than 80% of AMI. Recipient certified by the Housing Authority at applicant's expense unless the recipient already certified. Unit R2 will comply with affirmative fair housing laws, and recipient will be exempt from all condominium fees, including hazard insurance. And I see, okay.
Did you want me to screen share so people can be looking at
Yeah,
this?
why don't you do that? Okay, our housing referencing the affordable unit is 1B, C, D, E, F, yeah, E and F, which we don't have up there because we have the applicants, but they're not that far off.
Fred Hancock has his hand up.
Go ahead, Fred.
I just wanted a clarification. Is it the applicant's offer that this is a rental apartment?
Yes.
It would seem that our conditions assumed it would be purchased from the language that was used.
Christina Brown and Christine Flynn have their hands.
Okay, Christina Brown first.
Christina, you got to unmute.
The question of whether the affordable unit is owned by the overall, owned by SAM and then rented out under these terms to somebody, or is it owned by the people who live there? Is it an ownership unit or a rental unit, basically?
It's owned by Sam.
I thought so. It wasn't clear in your offers.
It's a separate
Okay.
condominium unit, which will stay with the ownership that builds the project.
Right. So it will be rented out under the affordable housing terms.
Yep.
That means you will be exempt from, under your offer, you'll be exempt from the condominium fees, including hazard insurance for that unit.
What I did was in the condominium documents,
Yeah.
I spread that out among everyone. It's just the way I set it up. And people.
Okay. So technically you'd be exempt, but the money to pay for those fees will be covered by the spread over to the other units.
Yes.
Which is understandable. And then, but you don't specify that, or do you intend in your offer to say that, yes, you will own it? It will be rented under the affordable housing general terms, which means year round, not like the other units, which you clearly say, I think in your offer, could be rented out
True.
in smaller units than a whole year.
So we can certainly add that, Christina, if, you know, that,
Yeah, but it's good to clarify it.
well, we should add.
And perhaps Sam might want to clarify his offer.
So,
We've got Christine and then Joan.
Right. Christine, who was it? Christine Flynn?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
Thank you. The conditions that we outlined were premised on the housing policy that if you're doing home ownership units, the offer has to be home ownership. So I did not draft the conditions as a rental. I based it on a individual home ownership unit that would be lotteried off by the housing authority or a state certified housing entity. And there's a big difference.
Christine, you did that because you are more familiar with the policy than I, and you read it as saying that if it's in a development, when the houses are being sold in the development, that the affordable housing unit must likewise be sold. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, well, I think that we're going to have to make that explicit in the condition, in the proposed conditions. That's easy enough to do. Okay.
you're saying it has to be sold.
Well, that I believe is what the proposed conditions are premised on. And if that's what they're premised on, then we have to make that explicit. Whether or not we adopt that condition will be determined at deliberation.
I don't
You're
think,
offering it to retain ownership and rent it out. We understand the distinction. I'm just going to go through quickly the other conditions on the
We forgot.
unit. Oh, wait, go ahead, John.
Kathy.
Go ahead.
My comments actually go on the part that he said, not the additional parts. And that is that I just a little bit, you know, this Ross CV thing is a little bit confused. It's not confusing, but I think there should be a further condition that says if unit R2 of building A is not permitted to be used for residential housing by the zoning requirements of Tisbury, then a unit not smaller than the square footage of unit R2 shall be made available for housing on the same terms as the applicant offers. And my second thing would be to say that the recipient of unit R2, rental owner, whatever, or substitute, shall be entitled to all of the benefits available to other residential unit owners, including the benefit of hazard insurance. So I just want to make sure that the fact that they get everything, whatever it is, they get it. And I have to confess, I didn't read the condominium documents well enough to know whether that is implicit, but I don't think it hurts to make it explicit.
Okay, if you could please send that language, if you haven't already, send that to Alex so that.
I will. My last question would be, if it is a sale thing, I don't know how we determine the sale price. It isn't, I don't know how we determine the sale price. It doesn't appear to be in Christine's conditions.
How's that prepared? How is that usually determined, Christine?
I'm sorry, what's the question, Joan?
Question is, how much would it cost if it's going to be sold?
It depends on what the income is. So I think the applicant capped it at 250, so I can double check and get a calculation on that.
Right. So I don't care what he capped it at. I mean, I
guessing.
do care, but hold on just a second, Sam. I totally care. I just want to make sure that that number is a number which is affordable by somebody earning, 80% AMI, blah, blah, blah.
It'll be income certified by the Dukes County Regional Housing Authority, who have a formula to base the sale price.
Okay, so that doesn't, that's not express. I think it should be.
Okay. I think it's expressed in the conditions. I think I was pretty clear on that.
I don't think it says it's going to be sold anywhere. And that, it's implied, but it's not explicit. Kathy, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify with Christine. So I understand why you assumed it was a sale, an apartment that would be for sale. But are you saying that we can't ever do it the way Sam thought he was doing it? I mean, with one rental within the context of other apartments? I'm just trying to decide, like, what is it that we would prefer, and do we even have a choice?
Well, we
I thi-
clearly
I
have a
would
choice
prefer
because
that-
These are not mandatory policies. We definitely have a choice.
We have a choice. However, I would recommend to be consistent that if it's home ownership, that individual should have an option for home ownership.
And so I guess I wonder from Sam, do you feel strongly about that? Is that,
The only thing I feel strongly about is the lottery aspect, because I would like to have the option, if someone approaches me during the course of the next year while we're building this, and someone that I know or someone that is recommended to me who's qualified, I would just like to have the option to have that person be the person instead of someone chosen randomly or by lottery. And it's just, I just think
go along with that 100%.
the what?
100%. I go along with that.
Well, we're not supposed to express opinions at this point. That's something for deliberation. We're just trying to identify what we're going to recommend to the overall commission.
And
But go ahead.
can I suggest that between now and when this gets determined, I just had a quick look at the housing policy. It's not clear to me that it requires sale if the other ones are sale. It says it's got to be an affordable housing site. I'd like us to think about it before we say what the policy says. It's not absolutely.
Yeah, I just looked at it too. It's not exactly clear. Well, I think the issue has been discussed. Why don't we move on and resolve it, at full commission? Doug, is that right? with you?
Yeah, I believe the other conditions in the sub-conditions are all pretty standard. Universal design, count towards chapter 40B, selected by DCHA, exempt from all condo covenants and fees. Although covenants, it depends on what the covenant is. There can be affirmative covenants that are to the benefit of a resident. So it depends on what the covenant is.
Christine had a comment. Christine Flynn.
Yes, in terms of the applicant selection, we do need to make sure that we are following affirmative fair housing guidelines. And if it's self-selection, the unit will not count towards the state subsidized housing inventory. And the town of Tisbury has been very proactive in wanting to, in their multifamily zoning bylaw, to ensure that these units are counted towards their 10% affordable housing stock threshold.
So it should be by lottery in order to accomplish that.
Correct.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, I think the rest of these, except for the monetary mitigation, are all pretty standard items, and I don't want to dwell on them. I think that at least on the housing issue, the elephant in the room is that the applicant, on the monetary mitigation, the applicant is offering $32,800. I think there's an agreement on the calculation for new space added and what that would be, but the applicant takes the position that space withdrawn from use should be deducted. So the applicant wants to pay only $32,800, and staff is recommending that it should be $73,600. Christine, can you explain the rationale why one would not give credit for space withdrawn?
in terms, in doing the calculations, we took out buildings A and C, and we just based it on new development. And we thought that was a cleaner method of doing the calculations. In terms of doing new commercial development versus new net commercial development, the housing policy isn't very clear. And we did make an exception with the Manitomi building. So I would defer to the board in terms of how they would like to interpret the policy.
I just took the floor. My view is that the purpose of the policy is to deal with incremental impact. And if commercial space is being eliminated, there's less impact. If there's a change, then it would have to be looked at again. But the whole purpose is to look at the development itself and the incremental impact on housing. So although 32,000 sounds like peanuts, I think it's probably the right number.
Any other commissioners have comments on that?
Yeah, I would disagree there, I think, because because Christine has eliminated the A and C buildings entirely from this, and some of that space wasn't all used commercially anyway previously, and some of it will be. So I think that kind of evens out itself, and it seems to me, following Joan's logic, that the two new buildings that are being created and the new office space, retail space should therefore be the basis of this monetary mitigation.
Yeah, so I didn't know what I was adding in. I'm just talking about philosophically incremental, and if space was zoned commercial, but they didn't happen to be using it, I think that should be excluded.
We should think about what kind of space that was. There was, I think in the Manitomi building, we excluded storage space or not primary spaces, and the spaces that we're talking about were storage, heating plant. It wasn't primary commercial space. It was, what we would have normally excluded. So I think you have to look at what the use is of the space.
And what's your conclusion? I mean, let's assume that everything you say is correct, but are you suggesting?
Well, I would suggest that, the bank lobby floor was certainly a used commercial space. The extension of the basement, that first floor that was offices, was clearly a use, and the drive-through building was clearly a use. The other stone building that was the heating plant and storage, that was not ever a public commercial space. It was just adjunct to the bank. So I wouldn't count those spaces.
If I may, that was.
And the basement itself under the bank lobby as well was, I don't know. I mean, we'd have to go in and look at those spaces or better understand how those were used.
Yeah, Sam.
In the building that has a heating plant in it is not part of this calculation. I did not try to deduct that. If you look at the offers there, I'm deducting the basement of the bank and the extension to the basement of the bank and the area in the drive-through that is being devoted to condominium storage. Those were the things that were being deducted. And the basement of the bank was definitely used as office space. It's where the bathrooms are. It's where there's the two vaults down there. I mean, it's definitely was in use. And it just seems to me, as a matter of fairness, that the concept is, as Joan put it better than I could, it's about the incremental increase. And, I mean, I understand the, temptation to get as much money as possible for this, but it just doesn't seem like it certainly doesn't follow the policy, which is clear about incremental increase.
Sam, you can clarify stuff, but you can't really argue.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
if the space
I'm gonna ask
was,
you to refrain from that. It's one thing to tell us what the uses were.
yeah, if the space in the bank was commercial space, that's fine. Why would we deduct it now? It, you know, same with the C building. It's already existing space. It's not newly created space. So I don't see how we're trying to get more than we're entitled to.
We're only deducting it if Christine had somehow included it. All I'm saying is that, and maybe we should not try to resolve it now. We should go and look at and say, what space is being used for non-commercial, for commercial that was not previously being used commercial? That,
This whole thing is putting the cart before the horse. You know, by the time the smoke clears, I know what he's going to be able to afford to pay. $73,000 sounds pretty outrageous to me. That's a ton of goddamn money. Now, I don't know what it's going to be worth with the COVID and with the big fluctuations, everything going up and down. I think that's a ridiculous number. I think 30, 40 grand is even too much myself.
We'll have to listen, Mr. Chair. We'll have to. We've heard all the comments. You know,
Yeah, I think we can move on.
Christine and I are going to have to put a memo and a graphic that shows existing what Sam has, and then what he has proposed to do, and you guys make the call at that point.
And if I may, I would just suggest that you read the policy, which I did carefully, that tells you how to do this calculation.
Yeah, I think we can do that. And I don't think I mean, I'm going to interrupt you because the applicant's job here is to clarify factual information, not advocate.
So we'll prepare that. We'll prepare that for the full commission.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing, moving right along, is the commercial uses. On the applicants, what do we got? Yeah, we're on the, yeah. That's the applicants. Okay. I'm getting it too mixed up. Commercial units, retail and office use only. And the applicant is proposing that if it doesn't get a waiver, that unit C1 will be used only for qualifying uses under Chapter 48, Section 3. The only qualifying uses are religious or nonprofit educational, but that's his call if he chooses to do that.
Doug, I have a question about that for us to consider, I think, is that essentially we're allowing the residential basement use to dictate the commercial use on Main Street. And I feel like, are we creating is this going to set up a situation where that space is never going to be properly occupied as a commercial space on a Main Street because we're adding residential use to the building in the basement? And it feels like one shouldn't be the primary driver in a commercial district.
does the planning board have jurisdiction to determine this matter?
Yes.
All right, I would say that his little paragraph there is very interesting, but it's just a statement of, it's a statement of what he might do, right? So I think that what I suggested, the paragraph I suggested before, which I sent to Alex, I think takes care of what the eventuality is. The planning board, it seems to me, if they don't like that in their business district, then that is for them to decide. I think, maybe we should be deciding it, but I personally would be happy if the planning board dealt with that matter with the permit that he has to request.
Well, I think Ben's point is there are an awful lot of empty storefronts on Main Street in Vineyard Haven on a regular basis. And I'm not talking, not just the winter sometimes. And this one could be an empty storefront for a long time. But, well, that we have it there, and we know what the issue is. I just want to keep moving because it's already 6 o'clock. Traffic and circulation, everything ADA compliant.
It does say that ADA buildings will be ADA compliant. A number of residential uses. Is that
Units.
It's our unit. Sam, do you know what that number is?
What was the question?
If you look at your offer number 5, the second sentence says, a number of residential units in the project are exempt.
Yes.
How many is that?
Well, potentially all of them, because any unit that is above the ground floor and doesn't have an elevator is an exempt. And that basically is, the driver of the whole concept in front of the planning board. So if they're non-elevator buildings, and if they're renovations, which is what everything in the basement is, they're exempt.
That's, I don't know anything about this, Sam. They're exempt by whom?
By the state, Massachusetts state regulations for affordable, for accessible buildings.
But how can you say they're ADA compliant if they're all exempt?
Well, what's required for ADA is to be able to get into the building, any building that has commercial space without going up steps. So that, and all of the pathways around the project and all of that will be ADA compliant. But once you're inside a residential unit, we go to there's a different standard there. And
So is the word commercial, should the word commercial be in that sentence?
No, I think the distinction is between new and existing. If Sam's converting an existing building to residential and it's on the first floor, he doesn't have to deal with ADA. But if it's a brand new building, I think he does, doesn't he?
Unless it's off the ground.
He's saying not.
No, or above the ground floor in non-elevator building.
Can I ask a question though? Isn't this line meaningless? I mean, he's got to be compliant with ADA.
Yeah.
No matter what we do.
Sounds like it.
ADA is a federal requirement. It's not, I mean, he's got to do it.
Right,
I
so
mean,
you could strike the whole thing of 5 and he still has to do whatever he has to do.
right, he's exempt from whatever the policy exempts him, but we don't have the authority to exempt him from anything.
Yeah, it's a non-offer really. Phasing and construction. He wants to build the residential condos in A through D first, then E, then F, and interior construction will be deferred until he has clients. And B and C, he wants to start immediately this summer. And-
Kathy's got her hand up.
Well, let's just finish, and then he wants to
Yeah, you
use
can finish that.
16 Union Street as construction entrance and the town parking lot as another. No access through Main Street, staging and parking all on site. Go ahead, Kathy.
I know we left the ADA compliant and said it doesn't matter, but does it? I guess we don't have to settle this now, but does it matter? I mean, wouldn't we want to have a project with some ADA accessible units in it? And I understand that might mean that you have to put some sort of lift in it, but do we want to have a whole new project, great project right on Main Street, but with not one unit that's that's accessible? So I just
believe we have a condition that the affordable unit has to be ADA compliant.
The one next to it could be without a lift because it's ground floor.
Right.
And those three, 1, 2, and 3 are all going to be accessible in the meaning of that. It's just that there's also a townhouse definition. So any unit that has more than one floor inside the unit does not have to be accessible. In other words, they're not trying to force you to build elevators on units which are, not designed to accommodate that situation.
But units 1, 2, and 3 are all ground floor units. So
Yes.
they don't require, and they are all also only 1 story of residential. So they don't require an elevator, and I don't know what's involved in ADA, but it strikes me that they could have all the bathroom ADA stuff and, I don't know what it is, but it strikes me that they could be ADA compliant without causing the additional significant expense of an elevator because it's not relevant for them.
Well, I'm looking at it now. It's, 321 CMR Architectural Access Board. And there are very detailed regulations on how this works. If you're saying you want to exceed those, then, you can do that, I suppose. But even in projects that have a lot of units, only a few of them have to be accessible throughout. And that is a big deal, believe it or not.
So perhaps, Sam, perhaps what could happen is.
You can't really have a discussion with them like this.
No, well, I did ask for clarification and that was useful. Perhaps what we could do is park the question of whether we would seek to be more strict than the existing ADA code. And the staff could find out what it actually means in terms of additional construction. And we could then decide whether that requirement was reasonable or not. And I think the reason Kathy is interested in this is because the primary market is the elderly. And this would, if it were reasonable to require ADA compliance, it would facilitate the use of that by people who are actually elderly.
Well,
And who could use that kind of housing?
what she was saying though also was, regardless of ADA, she feels like it should be accessible. And even if it wasn't, maybe we could exceed.
I mean, with some units, like those 3 units, for instance.
So,
would
but
be
I found
compliant.
what Joan said is to research and give you something as to what ADA means, and then if you want to exceed it, that's up to you.
No, I don't want to exceed ADA. What I would like to know is, in order to decide whether or not it is reasonable to ask Sam to make those 3 units ADA compliant, I feel like I can't say yes or no until I know whether it is onerous or not. So a little bit of information would be helpful to me to decide whether or not it is a significant or a nominal ask to make them ADA compliant. I don't know what ADA compliant means, so I don't know how to assess.
What if they are ADA compliant, but it doesn't require anything? You're fine with that?
Well,
They may be ADA requirement, they may be ADA compliant without anything.
well, I think
That's fine.
that's great. I
That's
think
great.
I might tell you that that's not exactly the case.
Well,
But
I'm saying,
I know at least the bathroom has to have bars and all that. I don't know what else is required.
but it may. I think Kathy was
And it
asking-
is a housing need that we have. That's, Joan's right about that. I mean, we could use some housing for older people. And Sam even said that when he first presented it, that there are people looking to downsize, and it's a great location for that. It would just seem too bad to me that there weren't at least a couple of units that would fit that bill.
No, but
The biggest requirement is going to be spatial, that would be hard for Sam to meet. So, you need certain turning radiuses in the bathrooms and kitchens, and the access doors have to be a certain width. I think he would run into real problems with the layout if he had to meet those standards. So I think we have to be careful we don't push him into a situation where he just doesn't have the room to be able to meet those standards.
Right, and that's why I wanted to know, because I'm not interested in having him, reduce the number of apartments just so that he can get the turning radius. I'm assuming, Sam, that the unit number 2 is planned for ADA accessibility.
Accessibility, definitely. Whether it meets every single one of, you have to understand there's just volumes of things that you have to do to make a unit truly an ADA compliant unit. And it's not reasonable to tell someone who's buying a unit that they want to live in, that wants to look great and all that, to to have it just automatically tricked up with all kinds of extra, overly large spaces, counters at different heights. There's just a lot. Ben appreciates this because he's an architect. There's, regulations about how wide the corridors have to be in places where how much room you have to have 18 inches on the pull side of a door, which there's just a whole lot of things that become very difficult to do in small spaces like this, especially under conditions where you're renovating.
The question was addressed to the affordable housing unit, though. It wasn't addressed to all of them. I mean, yes, certainly that your comment is relevant to all of them, but the question is whether or not the 600 square foot affordable unit was planned to be ADA compliant.
It is not planned to be ADA compliant, and in that the bathroom is not going to be an ADA bathroom. It would need to be 3 times as big as it is, and just not reasonable. And the person who buys or rents that unit is not going to want to live in a space like that. So it just
doesn't make any sense.
Depends on whether or not they're in a wheelchair. If they're in a wheelchair, they're sure going to want it, but you don't know that. You can't plan that way right now. But it'll be ADA accessible. That's the main, the one point you're presenting, because it's on the ground floor.
Christina Brown's had her hand up.
Christina, go ahead.
No, most of my questions have been answered. I do think it's important that the staff do what Joan laid out. Tell us more specifically what's ADA. We can look at it, see whether some of it makes common sense and we want to use it or not.
Yeah,
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think you shouldn't spend too much time on it because it's sounding like it's not going to be too useful. And I would say, Doug, don't forget to do our number 3 construction under construction, which is in the same topic as the other construction.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a no-brainer. Construction activity shall not interfere in any way with the STAM property boundary or easement.
Just wanted to make sure we ticked it.
The question really is, are we suggesting with that during construction, the STAM easement will remain open at all times? I mean, that's fine as long as that's what we're saying. We're clearly not going to address the property boundary.
Is that included in the STAM's agreement with Sam?
It is not. It is not included specifically during construction.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just say that Peter Stab and I believe he's on the call, have worked closely together on this, and we will continue to. I mean, I'm not going to cut him off, but I may ask him to go a different route or something like that to help us out, because it's in both of our interests to get this done and, move on.
Does he have direct access to Main Street?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, that kind of solves that problem, if you ask me.
In the summertime, it does, and as long as it's also not for large vehicles. It's a narrow right of way, and it's pretty steep. Christina, do you have a question?
Yeah, another question about construction. Sam's office says there'll be 2 construction entrances, 16 Union Street and through the town parking lot. Union Street's pretty narrow, the town parking lot is pretty full. Do we need to explore that?
Well, according to his plan, the Union Street access way it looks like it's 12 feet wide.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very.
I had some other questions about the permanent usability of the Union Street access to the
Exactly 40
shops.
feet. It's 40 feet wide.
Union Street itself or the access from Union Street into your property?
There's nothing.
Because that's because you haven't built F. It'll be 40 feet wide until you build F.
Yes, and then
okay,
it'll become a narrower problem, but it'll be.
Yeah.
So during construction, you have no problem getting using that access for the trucks.
No, it's.
But how about Union Street itself?
No.
Are your trucks and Union Street with parking along it wide enough to handle the construction equipment you expect.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, good. I'm glad I asked a factual question and fairly detailed. I'm going to write that down. Thank you.
Okay, now there's a proposal as in his offers regarding phasing and construction. Any comments about that other than the construction entrance issue we just discussed? Okay, next is stormwater. The applicant is proposing that to ensure permeability, the civil engineer will examine all percolation areas under the removed asphalt to determine if additional excavation is needed to reach the sand. Removed material will be replaced with medium sand with a percolation rate of at least 50 feet per day. And that's consistent with, I believe, our number 4, applicant shall provide an engineered stormwater plan relating to drainage. Oh, wait, no, it isn't. Drainage of proposed walkways prior to start of construction.
That I thought was important because in a heavy rain, I don't think it should become cascading down those paths, those ADA compliant paths.
Well, keep in mind that the entrance from Main Street has never been and never will be ADA compliant. It's a pretty steep path, and water's been going down, cascading down that for quite a number of years. I guess the question is, is the applicant going to be doing enough to take care of that water when it comes down that way?
Well,
The calculations show, and the engineer's calculations show that we have at least probably 3 times what is required during the 2-year storm.
So if that's the case, Sam, then number 4 from the staff should not be any more onerous than your undertaking about on your paragraph 9.
Which one is 4?
It's
4 is our condition for the applicant shall provide an engineered
Oh, yeah.
stormwater plan, including as it relates to drainage of the proposed walkways prior to start of construction.
That's been done. It's
Yeah.
already.
great.
Okay. Applicant says lowest habitable levels of buildings D1 and D2 will be 13 feet above sea level to help account for sea level rise. All construction will adhere to code requirements for flood zones. Condominium may state any evacuation order must be obeyed.
May is not a very good.
That'll make a big difference. I will say that.
May is not a useful word.
Yeah. You can even say shall, and it still would be just as useful.
That's true. And when we look at the ones that have been proposed by staff for the buildings in the flood board, the developer shall inform.
Yeah.
Maybe the condominium documents must specify. At least their lawyer can read that and comment.
yeah. That feels important. Must specify.
These are his offers, so.
Yeah.
No, his offers are great. And then 5 under our proposal condition is,
Right, if we want to, we don't even have to accept it, or we can condition it to.
I don't think he'll have any problem telling them that.
his 12 and 13 and our 5 all go in a package. I think it's fine. I mean, I think it's fine.
Is there any reason to consider sort of removal of the buildings at some point? Who pays for that? If the owners of those units disappear because they can't get to them, does the condo association need to remove the buildings if they're become derelict? What's the final status?
Well, condition 13, or rather offer 13, says that I would be willing to put it in the condominium documents to make that clear that the owner is going to bear that risk.
But what happens if the owner is not there to take that risk on? They disappear and the condo association is left with a derelict building that can't be used. It's being regularly inundated. This is down the road. So, we have to imagine 30, 40 years from now, that potential.
So where's the owner? I mean, the owner owns it. The town can get rid of it and put a lien against the property.
If he's abandoning it, I don't see what the
But if
issue is.
there's no value to the property because it's flooding and the town has to take on the expense of removing it, should that be a burden that the town has to carry?
No,
Well, the town can assess the property owner. The person still owns the property owner.
Yeah.
Right. So the town can assess the property owner for the cost of removing a, abandoned or,
But the property owner can just disappear and the value of the property is gone at that point because of the inundation. What incentive would the property owner have to pay that bill to the town?
Well, you
the
could
same-
put in the condominium trust declaration of trust that the trust is responsible for removal, and that means it'll be on all the other owners.
The
If it's
same
just
could be
rural,
said of any of the other waterfront property in Tisbury. I mean,
Any property generally.
But we're talking about a new piece of property, not something that's existing.
30 to
Right.
40
I know,
years.
but the case isn't any different. I
no,
mean,
but our knowledge is different. We're in theory, I mean, I think that it's a little bit beyond, but whatever. I think that our knowledge and intent to protect the waterfront is different this year than it was 15 or 20 or 30 years ago. So I think that I don't see, frankly, I think Doug's solution is probably appropriate.
Mhm.
The
Sure.
appropriate solution is the market. To
Yeah.
buy one of these, you're going to have to get a whopping big mortgage. And the mortgage company is going to require all kinds of insurance, including flood insurance. They're not going to lend the money, and you're going to be in breach of the mortgage note if you don't maintain all kinds of insurance. So I think it's really going to be addressed by the market, but it certainly doesn't hurt to require that the condominium trust be
Yeah.
responsible. Because that lays it on everybody who is an owner of one of the units. Anything more on that?
Excuse me, I have a quick comment. If that statement is going to stay, I think it should say, as a result of sea level rise, storms or flooding.
Oh, right.
And which one, where is that in,
I think it was your suggestion. Let's see. I don't know where it was.
It's Sam's offer number 13, I think.
It's a follow.
okay, or flooding, yeah. Okay. Next is traffic.
Traffic?
No, actually, no, it's historic. Wait, I keep getting Sam's and ours mixed up. I'm sorry. Sam's offer number 14, historic character. All roof surfaces on building C will have terracotta tiles identical to building A. Existing field stone and building east of the stone bank annex and in walls will be reused on site to the greatest extent possible. Stone from building B will be used to construct retaining walls. Bricks from existing paths will be used to construct the pocket part. Lampposts will be set aside, and if salvageable, could be recycled. At present, there's no plan to reuse the lamps. And our only condition is the historical commission shall conduct final review of architectural details of buildings A to F, accounting for the applicant offers and MVC conditions. Any
Right,
comment?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy with Sam's. I don't quite know what ours means. Written permission from the town to, that they shall conduct final review. I'm not quite sure what that means. I think perhaps it should come back to the LUPC
Yeah.
with a report from the historical commission.
Thank you.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yes, so that it's
Christina, go ahead.
it's a joint decision with LUPC, the commission, and the Stark Commission, looking at the architecture of the buildings. And this sort of,
I'm not sure it's a joint decision. I think it would be an LUPC
Well,
decision, but we don't have the expertise.
of course,
We look to
of
them.
course, yeah.
Okay.
It's a joint review. Thank you.
Anything more on
Okay.
historic character? Because we definitely want to add the LUPC review.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
So,
let's back up.
A report to the LUPC, yeah.
Right. On our
And
conditions, we have traffic. The applicant doesn't have a condition on traffic. We added for traffic. Applicant shall provide written permit, provide written permission from town of Tisbury for vehicular access through the municipal parking lot prior to issuance of a building permit.
It's more like instead of provide, it's really obtain, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, he can't provide it. He has to go get it. Okay, anything on that?
Can I just ask a question about access for the inhabitants of the apartments? It's not quite clear to me if one had to unload a bunch of stuff. Sam, how does one do that? What's the accessibility?
Yeah, it's probably going to happen through the, through the parking lot because there's just really no other way to do it. And for some of the units which are kind of distant from that, it could be a bit of a schlep, but that's a small price to pay, I'd say for.
Would you consider having wagons or something to help people who need to bring a bunch of stuff like to those inner units? That is quite a schlep.
You mean, would the project provide? I think the best way to handle that is probably to let the condominium association decide that they want to do that. And they buy a few of those and decide where to store them.
Right. I mean, the only planning could be a storage place.
Yeah, there are a few spots around the property where that works, like underneath the deck of Unit 5 is a great place, for example.
Yeah, that's something for the condo association to deal with. Okay. Anything more on traffic?
I'm not sure if this works under traffic or not, but there was a concern raised, I think by Melinda Loberg in a letter about beach access.
Oh, yes.
That's not traffic, but
agree.
it's, we can certainly discuss.
Access.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's access. It's the only place I can figure out for it.
For those of you who may not remember, Belinda Loberg wrote a letter pointing out that the town is allocating significant wastewater flow and there'll be use of the town parking lot undoubtedly by users of the commercial and residential units. And that there has been I don't know if it's a tradition, but there has been some waterfront access the town has tried to preserve and had proposed that the applicant make the waterfront accessible to the public. That was what her proposal was, I believe.
Yes.
It's not in the conditions that have been proposed by staff. Is there a groundswell to propose that?
I think it's,
Yeah, I think that's a good proposal. And I think Sam also sort of supported that in the public hearing process as well, because that came up then.
Well, it's certainly something we would do to make access. I believe that the issue was to have people to be able to walk along the beach to get to Owen Park. And
yes, that's what they've traditionally been doing. Yeah.
And that is totally fine. I don't know that I'd want to make it a public beach because, I mean, we don't want to have people hanging out there because this is a common element in the condominium, but to pass through, no problem whatsoever.
They will need a machete though to get through the current growth that's there. It's really something.
would it be appropriate to ask Melinda to clarify what her interest was? She is on the Zoom. I mean, I'd like to know what she intended. It's not quite clear to me.
I mean, I think this is a general goal that the town has had along the waterfront is to keep, as Sam stated, that access across the properties. So you could walk to Owen Park and back. Whether somebody occasionally sets up there, I guess that's who knows. It's not a sort of destination beach by any stretch, but it is access to Owen Park, and that's what we're trying to preserve primarily.
Yeah.
And that seems to make sense. Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, Melinda's pretty, I think, pretty clear in her letter, but we might want to tighten it up. It, navigated on foot at the shoreline from the ferry to Owen Park.
Oh, there you go. There's the answer.
Yeah.
She uses that phrase, yeah. That's what she wants. That's what people have been doing. Nobody's been
Yeah, she's not
going up and
asking you-
picnicking on the grass. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
We're getting a thumbs up.
I think
from-
I would like to participate in the groundswell to explore and see if we can work out something that taking Sam's, intention and pin it down a little bit, not just your intention, but pin it down how we can chase away people going up over it. But you can't chase away people on the beach, okay?
I think if we word it the way she asked for it to be worded, and she just put the big thumbs up there, by the way. I don't know if everybody saw that.
No, I didn't see.
That's certainly fine with us.
She liked the unfettered access to the beach. Yeah. She said that in the letter.
That's what it said.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we made a note to add Melinda's wording. Okay. Next is energy. Applicant says if project approved, applicant will return to the Historic Commission to review building details, including a discussion of solar powered panels on selected roofs. Our proposed condition was that solar panels shall be installed on south facing roofs of buildings B and D1 with input from the Historic Commission. Plans showing the final location capacity shall be submitted to LUPC for approval prior to receipt of a building permit.
Yeah, I don't think that either of those is quite right. I think well, I mean, maybe it is for somebody, but I would suggest that it say, subject to the Tisbury Historic Commission approval, solar panels will be installed on the south-facing roofs. I don't think a discussion is right, nor do I think it's input. I mean, they control it, subject to their approval.
Well, I think it's the same approval that they would be seeking through LUPC for the final architectural drawings. And I would add that to be able to better understand the amount of solar, that some sort of calculation of energy use for the property. So how much is the solar actually accomplishing? Would help us get to,
Yes.
is it a satisfactory amount or not, or some other method required?
So Ben, I think that if they could go to the Historic Commission for the approval of the architectural stuff, then they come back to LUPC. If they haven't provided an indication of how much energy usage they have, we can certainly ask them before we consider whether or not to approve it. So I think we could let
Yeah,
that.
and I think it would just, it doesn't have to be exact. I think a ballpark number is, an appropriate starting point. But I think when we're looking at the architecture, we'll just look at the solar at the same time.
If I could just point out, almost all of these roofs are hip roofs. This is part of the architectural theme that was set by the bank, has been carried throughout the project. And it's very difficult, and I would even go so far to say unsightly, to try to cram solar collectors onto hip roofs because there's very little continuous surface.
Mhm.
And this is why I at some point I limited it to certain buildings which had, a good run of south-facing roof where it could make sense. I don't think that we should do any solar on the red tile roofs. I don't think it's appropriate. It's sort of an old world product, and I just think it would really destroy the sense of those. But there are a couple of buildings where it would work.
Well, I don't think we're proposing it on any of the tile roofs. I think the condition is for buildings B and D1. D1 is new construction. And I don't know that.
Building B is a good candidate.
Good candidate for solar?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we've got the sense of that. Is there anything more on this, on energy?
The other piece of it that I think we had in ours that wasn't in Sam's was the hot water
Right.
and heating and cooling is electric.
Right.
I believe Sam, you had stated
I
that
had
you
already said it
mini
that.
splits. But the one question was the hot water generation.
It will almost certainly be gas because you probably know this, Ben, the electric on-demand heaters are just big albatross in terms of energy use and the load that's put on to in order to do it is pretty great. And if there's a different way out, I mean, I wouldn't want to use 50-gallon water heaters. They just take up a lot of space, and these are very confined units. But I think generally we would have on-demand gas water heaters. But I would prefer not to be put in a box on this because, a lot of these units are small and confined spaces, and it may be difficult to do certain things. So
It may not be possible to power them on site with renewable energy. There may simply not be enough.
Oh,
Well,
no.
this is more just a power source to make hot water, right? So he's talking about wanting to use on demand because it's less of an impact on the square footage available, and that electric on demand is a harder lift than the gas on demand. But I mean, I think we have to. I think it's just going to take some time to maybe explore this. I don't think we can work this out in deliberations. It's too specific.
Wasn't Kate recommending a hybrid unit?
But that is a water heater that would take up a space.
A lot
and
of
the hybrids, because they're a compressor, you need a certain amount of airspace around them for them to function. They could be potentially in an external enclosed area that's vented. But this is, I think, where we're getting into specifics that might be tough to work out, like what the right solution is. I think, Sam, it would be worth exploring to the greatest extent possible the option of eliminating the need for propane tanks on the property to begin with, right? So then you don't have to locate propane tanks at all as well.
Well, let me just say about that. I think it's very important. A lot of these people are cooks, and people want to cook with gas. I just think we need to have propane on the site so people can cook with gas. It's just really important to a lot of people. And
have you looked at how you're going to locate individual propane tanks for each residential unit, or are they going to run off of a single propane tank with some sort of metering system?
Well, there's a giant propane tank already on the site in the yard in front of Unit 3.
But how do you manage different units and who's using the most, and how do you pay for that?
Oh, there's got to be meters. There'll be meters. There'll be meters at each.
For the condo association to deal with.
Yeah.
Would we want to have a line in the energy that just said, we hope that you would pick the solution that's as energy efficient as possible, given the alternatives?
That doesn't take into consideration the space issue.
Yeah, I mean, why don't we
energy efficient and be terrible on space?
Yeah. I'm not saying it right. Joan probably has a way to say this. I just meant we want Sam to be thinking efficiency when he's choosing, weighing out, all the variables that are there.
So I would say, Ben, what's the authority of the planning board? Because there's more time. I mean, we're kind of up against, we don't have a lot of time.
The authority of the planning board really doesn't extend into these matters. We're not going to have the ability to talk about it then. I mean, I think we could probably punt this to the same conversation around the architectural details, the solar panels. I think Sam's point, the hot water generation, it's not a huge energy load like heating and cooling is. So, if they're going to maintain propane for cooking on property, then an on-demand gas unit is not a huge problem. So we could punt this and get more clarity on it when we get to that.
Or have him, when he goes into design of what he's really got, make some goals, and then say he's got to come back, tell you.
Punt it to LUPC, you mean?
With a firm plan when he gets there.
Okay. Next is landscape and lighting. Wait,
Oh,
was anybody up? Go ahead, Christina.
yeah. uh, That ornamental uplighting that people do and they call it landscape lighting, no. I think we can tighten it up and say all lighting, first of all, has to come back, a lighting plan has to come back to IUPC, kind of like a landscaping plan, our usual.
Yeah,
And in that, but I think we want to say no uplighting.
we have that. Well, we could add no uplighting to our conditions, but we already have the final landscape and scaping plan, and a final lighting plan must come back to IUPC
Right,
before CO.
before CO.
For
And-
approval to the lighting, that was left out.
Right. But the landscape lighting beneath trees is a little scary. All lighting is down lighting, has to come, make your plan, come back to IUPC and we'll make sure it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Low path lights are good, but we can go into that. But on the question of coming back, of having been coming back to be approved before the building permit versus the CO, I'd like to go back to the architecture where we talked about it, and I think that should be finally approved before the building permit is issued.
Okay.
Doing it before the CO is kind of like difficult. I know sometimes we do one, sometimes the other, but
The horse might
was trying.
be in the barn.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd say the horse would be all the way on the other side of the pasture by then.
Yeah.
Okay, anything more on landscape or lighting?
no. Now that
Noise,
I've done my harangue against that uplighting in the trees.
that's a good point.
Yeah,
Uh,
the dark
noise,
sky.
we've got a proposed, we've covered all the applicants' offers. We have a few more conditions. The last page, noise, won't exceed decibel levels indicated by manufacturers occurring under typical conditions, and include details of the equipment, including locations, as part of the final landscape plan to be reviewed by LUPC prior to receipt of a CO. Sounds like that should be receipt of a building permit.
On the landscaping, I would agree because it's tight and essential. The landscaping is essential to the whole
Yeah.
design and building of the project. Yeah.
Okay,
I thought that was two separate things that I think what we would ask for is the HVAC locations before
Right.
the building permit, but the landscaping before C of O.
that makes sense. I think he already has given us the HVAC, haven't you?
Yes.
So you're willing to wait. Okay, for the final landscaping approval to the occupancy permit. Yeah, to the time of the occupancy permit. Okay.
Okay,
Because if it's not sufficient, then we can say plant a few more plants to meet the plan that was approved. Okay.
Did we want to go through all of the conditions here?
well, we've got a few more, yeah.
Yeah, we got more.
We've gone through everything except future modifications and condo documents. The future modifications is something that we are routinely including now. So I don't think there's any real need to discuss it.
Yeah.
Condo documents, final condo documents must be submitted to LUPC for approval prior to issuance of the CO. And must include exemption of the affordable unit from all fees and insurance coverage costs, location and uses of all common areas. And I think that should be also including limited common areas, common use areas. I don't think we need a statement in the condo documents that any changes of use have to come back to the MVC. I mean, we could put it in, but it's going to be in the decision, and the decision is going to be recorded.
Yeah.
I think, Doug, it is important to let the condo owners who are a couple of steps
Oh, yeah.
removed from this
Yeah.
just that they should know. And
Well,
so
it's
that,
been
you
hard
know,
to put it in. It does, there's no harm in putting it in. The condo trust is already going to be 25 to 50 pages long, so.
And did we agree that the condo trust should specify, as Ben made real clear, when these buildings wash away, the condo trust ultimately has to pay to get it cleaned up? If they can't track down the owner,
Or if
Yeah.
not otherwise covered by insurance.
That's awful complicated.
well, that's
Just
what the
makes sense.
lawyers do, isn't it?
Yeah, it won't be very complicated.
But I like,
Well, must
I
certainly
thought
be
Doug's
dealt with by-
suggestion made sense that, in order that the town isn't stuck with a mess, the condo trust will.
Yeah, we're going to include that.
Good. And I'd also, I'd like to include something that speaks about walking on the beach from the steamship to Owen Park.
It will be.
Yeah, we've already got that.
Yeah, but it
With Melinda's
wasn't,
proposal.
it's what?
We're going to include as
As-
a condition Melinda's proposal. Sam has indicated that he's open to that.
But a condition, yeah,
Yes.
so that if Sam
Yes,
takes off to Tahiti,
yes.
people can
I
still
think we've
walk there.
agreed to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other two things were commercial unit owners will have to understand the restrictions, and all employees of commercial units shall be provided with VTA bus passes free of charge as a mitigation of traffic.
Yeah.
Any comments about any of those conditions? Okay.
Generally,
We've
with a
got
little polish.
11 minutes to do benefits and detriments.
Wait, Doug,
Okay.
there were two other conditions that I think we need to consider that weren't in this list.
Oh, really?
Yep.
And what are they?
So one of them, so there was some discrepancy in the plan still as in terms of the location of building D2. I think there should be a condition just clarifying that the location of D2 shall be shown in the site plan dated 3/9 or 3/24. Just to be clear as to what we're approving. And then the second condition should be that approved uses in each of the buildings shall be shown in the site plan dated 3/9. And as indicated in the staff report, because I think there are some minor differences in other documents in the record at this point.
No, they make sense.
Yeah,
Add them.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anything else on conditions before we move on? Yes, go ahead, Christina.
I'm not sure it's a condition, but the LUPC's responsibility to okay or comment on the traffic study and the traffic report. Do we need to do anything more but accept what we've been given? I haven't seen the whole report, but I think that it's mentioned in the staff notes. Over to you, Alex. Help me out here.
What is your question, Christina?
Yeah, the traffic report. Did we okay it?
It's
Are we
reflected
satisfied
in the
with it?
benefits and detriment.
Yeah, we usually don't okay it. We just reflect.
No, I mean,
Right,
Christina,
you're right.
LUPC did vote that the staff could do
The
the.
staff would do it.
traffic
Yeah,
report.
I'm sorry. Yes, I was smearing the two together because
Yeah, we did that.
it's
Before
kind of
the
scary
public
when you
hearing.
look at it. Yeah.
Is this on for deliberation on Thursday?
No.
We're
Okay,
not
well,
ready.
We could, if we don't have enough time to finish, we can follow up on another meeting perhaps. Yeah.
Could I just make a plea that possibly it be put on for Thursday or absolutely as soon as possible? Because as Adam well knows, I'm dealing with Santander Bank and he knows what that's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, but there's no way we can get this on for Thursday. We haven't noticed it. We're not even gonna get through the LUPC. And we have stuff. for
When is it scheduled for?
Who should I take off, Sam? Should I cancel the Tinian, the Tisbury Marine Terminal? Should I
We
cancel?
don't even have to get into it, Adam. We don't have to get
When
into
when
it.
is it scheduled for?
We haven't scheduled it because I want to see how much time it has. If we haven't even gotten through this yet.
Okay,
We
well,
we're all full. I'll just tell you, we're all full for the 8th. Then we have the 15th, we have the field. We're off the 22nd. What do we have the 29th?
When you said we're off, you mean we don't have a meeting
We
on
don't
the
have a meeting because
22nd?
it's a vacation week.
This has been scheduled for, let me just pull it up.
Yeah, the
May,
29th, the
that's
harbor.
the harbor view.
Yeah,
we could
which-
potentially do it the 29th of April.
yeah, maybe we could do it the 29th. That's the, and I'll have to talk to the Harborview people. Sam, that gives you 2 days before your date, but that's the only date I've got.
Well, we're not gonna finish benefits and detriments tonight because we've got all of 7 minutes left. So we've only got 2 more LUPCs before the 29th. One is next week we have the Stop and Shop Edgartown. That really should not take the whole time. Maybe we ought to put this on. We beat that to death last time.
Let's do that.
So
That's right.
yeah, so we'll continue with benefits and detriments then. And that should give us enough time. If we really get stuck, we could probably find some time.
Well, then
Yeah.
we'll try to schedule this then for deliberation officially for the 29th of April.
Okay. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to start benefits and detriments
No.
in 5
No.
minutes.
So that's next
Somebody
month.
is dying to do it.
Sam,
No.
I also think that we have so many people here that will facilitate the full commission's review of the conditions and offers, since they will have been so thoroughly reviewed. And I think if on the 29th we can get through the benefits and detriments, it will not be an arduous process once we get to the full commission.
I appreciate that.
Always an arduous process.
Yeah.
It's just going to be an arduous process for me to keep this damned bank from Spain at bay. Because remember, no one else can approve this until you all have. So it keeps bumping everything down the line.
Well, we're almost there.
Okay.
Are you dealing with Spain? I dealt with a company office in Texas. Are you dealing with the one?
Okay.
Hey. In Spain, where they take naps all afternoon,
No, I mean,
they want to rush.
it's difficult to deal with them. There's no question.
I have a Spanish cousin. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Alex, can you and staff clean up the conditions that we've discussed and circulate them before next Monday? Hopefully,
We'll do that.
don't have to spend any time on them. But you can add what
In
you've,
fact, if you would circulate them as soon as you can,
right.
it would give us an opportunity to, in case you've made a mistake, rectify that so that it would even take less time when we meet.
And John, you've already submitted those 2 proposed conditions.
I did, I sent them to Alex.
Okay.
I
All
mean,
right.
I do want to say, we need to clarify the affordable housing thing
Yeah.
because it's kind of, it's not necessarily written as if it's going to be a sale. So I think that needs to be clarified.
Yes.
Christine Flynn.
Christine Flynn, did you have something there?
Yes, I think in terms of the project, it should be consistent with the other units. I think if we're going to meet the spirit and intent of past precedent, the unit should be a condo. And I also think if we're looking to help the town achieve their Chapter 40B subsidized housing inventory, it needs to be consistent with the rest of the project. And it also has to meet affirmative fair housing. So it's got to be consistent according to those guidelines.
Which is already in your proposed conditions.
Correct.
Okay.
I think
Just clarify that it's going to be sold as opposed to rental.
That's
Correct.
her recommendation. I think that, right? I mean, let's just make that clear. That would be her recommendation. The policy isn't express on that, as subject to Adam having a look at it in the course of the next whatever week. And it's fine to write it that way. We just need to make it clear that it's,
Okay. Well, we'll have,
yeah.
we'll send it all out. We'll send the policy out. You can look at it and make a decision as to how you want to proceed. It's very similar to what we're going to do with the American with Disabilities Act. There's several options. You're going to have to decide.
Yeah.
what you're gonna do.
One other thing that I think we need to address if it becomes a sale condo is what kind of profit the owner would be able to get if they sell it after 10 or 15 years. What kind of appreciation is acceptable?
Okay.
That becomes an issue with the sale.
Fred,
Yeah, I think we
Fred-
talked about that in Meeting House. There might be useful language there.
Fred,
Christine,
there's-
isn't there a way we do that?
yeah,
Yes.
there is.
The Housing Authority, on all future resales, there'll be, the resale will be capped according to the same income thresholds. So the appreciation of the value will be limited.
So if that is in fact our intent, that would need to be a part
Yes.
of this condition.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
stipulated.
1C,
Thank you.
it's already in there.
Well, no, that just says that it becomes AMI, is still AMI restricted. It doesn't say what kind of appreciation is given.
We've talked about not wanting to disincent the owner from making improvements. And we've said that they'd be able to take the value of the improvement with them. I think we thought that I don't remember. We did talk about it in Meeting House, and we did have draft conditions. So that's a good
Let's-
place to look.
But keep in mind, the ones in Meeting House were not 80% AMI. They were a different animal.
Yeah. Meeting House,
Yeah.
that is affordable housing policy things with the money, that the stuff that he was doing was totally.
Yeah.
But I think I understand what you want.
And most of the affordable housing committees, certainly Edgartown, and Lucy could help you with this. Edgartown has, on the affordable housing committee, has a strict list of procedures about resale, including formulas, and we've changed them recently, formulas for how much you can sell it for and the improvements. I
The
suggest we look at those.
The universal deed writer has a really interesting formula. so
Yeah.
it's Really
Oh,
helpful.
thanks, Lucy.
I see that Elaine Miller
Help
has
him out.
her hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna
Elaine, did
mention.
you want to make a comment? You have to unmute.
And just to note that the record's closed, so.
Yes, I understand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I just want to qualify that this is going to be a lottery sale.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've discussed
I
that.
didn't
in
hear that. I heard it in the
but that's-
conversation, but I didn't hear in the final decision or
Well,
discussion.
I believe Sam would like to have the option of doing that, but Christine Flynn has pointed out that in order for it to qualify for the town getting benefit under Chapter 40A, that it has to be a lottery. And that the condition that has been drafted by staff requires it to be a lottery.
Okay, so I mean, so the decision of the commission, or at least the direction of the commission, is that it needs to be a lottery.
Oh, yeah.
That is a proposed condition by staff, and we'll vote on that at deliberation, but we have often followed that. I would not be surprised if we adopt it.
Okay, thank you so much. Don't want to take any more of your time.
No, it's absolutely all right. It's a good question. Thank you. Okay,
I got a comment on that. And if Sam is putting up the dough for affordable housing, or putting up the unit or whatever, and I think he's certainly entitled, when they have I don't understand the lottery business. Anybody that can pass what they have to pass and the qualifications they have to have for the housing authority or whoever the powers to be in the town of Indian Haven, I would think it's certainly as Sam could pick the winner. I think it'd be really important. My deal in the town of West Isbury was, as long as they match the affordable, I could pick the person that I wanted to go in there.
well, I think that that's something to be discussed at deliberation. Yeah.
But I'm
Okay.
glad Trip brought it up because it is an interesting idea, particularly when it's one unit and it's, that everybody gets qualified in the routine way through the Regional Housing Authority and the banks and all that stuff. Sorry, it's a process that qualifies people. But then among those, the owner gets to choose
Sam, did you
in
want?
particular cases that fit the case.
Just while we're on
Unless-
the subject, I just want to read from the policy on monetary mitigation. It says monetary mitigation for the commercial components of a project is calculated based on an estimate of the number of additional people to be employed as a result of the implementation of the applicant's DRI project. So it's, it seems like the certain intent, and certainly the fair thing, is to, if any space is taken out of service, is to deduct it, because it's all about what's the additional, as Joan put it, incremental increase.
Okay, thanks very much. That's, we've run out of time, and we will continue this discussion on April the 12th. Meeting is adjourned.